It's also a privilege to introduce our class speaker, Courtney Miller. Now, not just yet, Court. Let me tell you something about, Courtney wrote a bio for me to read, which I'm not gonna read. I wrote my own. Now let me tell you about Captain Miller. She's the sister of Kelly and Riley. Everyone, of course, knows that Riley is their mother's favorite. Riley is an Irish Terrier. Courtney graduated from the United States Military Academy and commissioned into the United States Army. At Tuck, she is always smiling and has a warmth that is infectious. It is what draws people to her resiliency, her kindness. She has been a gracious host, an exemplary leader, and a treasured friend. One love, one Tuck. It's all yours, Court. Thank you.
What a great introduction. Before I start, I want to take this opportunity to have our Tuck partners stand so we can give them a booming round of applause and thank them for everything they bring to and do for this community. So please stand up and let's give them a thunderous round of applause. So, for the decade of my life before Tuck, I served as an officer in the U.S. Army and subsequently lived in 11 different places, in 5 U.S. states and 3 countries. My experience was unlike every film you've ever seen about the Army, where relationships within units were glorified. Think Band of Brothers. As the only female officer of 700 soldiers, my experience was isolating. During my first deployment to Iraq, it became clear that as a woman, I was a minority, and I felt like my gender was a liability. I decided that to preserve my reputation, the best move was to maintain a stoic professionalism. In order to blend in with my surroundings and succeed, I put up a wall. I intentionally never let any of my soldiers or male counterparts see beyond the Captain Miller facade. I took pains to never be seen in civilian clothes by my peers, and when I was back stateside, I chose to live almost an hour from where I worked to avoid my 2 lives and selves intertwining. I guess I went to such great lengths because I felt like my identity, my true self, someone who doesn't take themselves that seriously, who sometimes entertains doubt and uncertainty, who, let's be real, is kind of goofy, starkly contrasted with my professional identity as an Army officer. So I hid behind the comfort of my Captain Miller alter ego. To gain credibility in the Army, I took on more responsibility, led training, volunteered to do the worst jobs. Heck, I even rappelled out of a helicopter and parachuted out of a perfectly good aircraft more than once. And let's not forget the whole going to war twice thing. Over the 6 years, everything was going great. That wall was working. Ultimately, I was selected to serve in the Old Guard, which is also known as the official escort to the President of the United States at Arlington National Cemetery. I felt, like many of you probably did, that I was at the height of my career when I decided to leave it. I fell in love with Tuck at first visit, and I got even more jazzed about business school when I heard this TED Talk about leadership. In it, Rosalinde Torres asked the question, are you courageous enough to abandon a practice that has made you successful in the past? And at the time, I was like, yes, that's me. I'm courageous. The Army had made me successful in the past, and so I did what I felt like was a very bold and courageous thing. I resigned my commission and I came to Tuck. I had this expectation that I would come here to learn the vernacular and leverage the resources available at a top-tier MBA program. Believe me when I say that in the Army, I was a bit saturated on leadership training. I have all the required personal development books to prove it. So when I came to Tuck, I wanted to learn and think about new and different things. Business things. I guess that's the technical term. But then, a couple of days before I got to Tuck, it struck me. I had not been in the civilian world in more than 10 years. I remember a few days before I arrived, this flurry of questions running through my head. Did I just low-key ruin my life because I got jazzed about a TED Talk? What will I wear? I'd worn a uniform for the past 23 years. First in Catholic school, then at West Point, and then every day as an Army officer. I mean, I even own an Army-issued bathrobe. You can ask my roommates. I feel really good in uniforms. Like today is my perfect example as it pertains to getting dressed, and I look out at this glorious sea of the same robes. There are other questions. Who is McKinsey? What's a synergy? I spent a summer in an investment bank and I'm still not sure. And then, when will I have time to finish my personal memoir that I'd already named Harnessing the Power of Awkward? Seriously, what do I wear here? I decided I would survive the same way I had in any new situation in the past. I would stay kind, gracious, professional, and most importantly, keep up that wall. I began to manage my downside risk. As the only female veteran in our class and an introvert, the probability of me being a misunderstood loner, and a poorly dressed one at that, seemed very high. I had some early victories, though. On the tech trek before school, one of our classmates remarked that she assumed I was a marketing professional. And I thought to myself, yes, I'm fitting in. Marketing, whatever that means. I'm not sure quite yet. We don't do marketing in the Army. Maybe I should at the very least participate a little, I thought, so as not to arouse suspicion. So I started showing up to Tuck things. My first attempt was going to Diwali, or the celebration for the Festival of Lights in India. It helped that it took place only steps from my dorm room in Rather. I show up and the room's transformed. Our Indian classmates are wearing beautiful saris and kurtas, and then the show starts. 2 hours of animated storytelling accompanied by about 7 dance numbers and a whole lot of tandoori chicken. I couldn't believe you went through so much trouble just to expose your world to us. You made it easy to ask about life growing up in India and the festivals and traditions, the good and the bad. You were so open. Next, I went to Sachem Around the World, where classmates and their partners volunteer their homes and recreate cultural experiences for the people who drop by. We broke bread together, or vodka with pickles, whatever it happened to be, and you told me stories about the food your grandmothers made and what you ate for breakfast as a kid. But you also told me about your hopes for your country and your families, and I left taken aback by your unguarded honesty. Finally, the same thing happened when I went to Tuck Talks, evenings where Tuck students prepare a 10-minute talk that they give in front of hundreds of their peers to answer the question, what is a person or an event that fundamentally changed the way you see the world? There, you talked about your time as a doctor in South Sudan, about macheting your way through the jungles of Vanuatu, about dealing with devastating loss and crushing disappointment, and then you opened up about your family and your spirituality. You spent dozens of hours preparing to share the most impactful details of your life with 300 or more people you're going to be personally and professionally connected to forever. Sitting in the audience at the first talk, I thought, I can't imagine sharing even one of these types of stories with my peers in the Army. I felt surprised by my admiration for you. You talked about loss and revealed your weaknesses and failures, and I related to you more. It went against every lesson I'd had about leadership till then. And these nights at Tuck weren't the exception, they were the rule. We went to small group dinners together, and you hosted fiestas and fed us hot pots and barbecue. We celebrated winter carnival, played hockey, we went to cabin nights, wine nights, and reunions. And then reunions for the reunions. We beat every business school in all of the sports we played against them. You opened your spiritual lives to me, a lifelong practicing Catholic. We shared Seder, celebrated Eid Mubarak, and you helped me learn a couple of names of the Hindu gods. And during all of this, you shared your lives, families, hopes, fears, and dreams with me and each other. 2 years ago, when I thought about abandoning the things that made me successful in the past, my mind focused on the obvious, the Army, on leaving a career that I loved with people for whom I have the deepest respect. What I didn't anticipate abandoning was this other component of my past success that felt so crucial that I wasn't even sure I could give it up. The practice of putting up walls, of keeping my true self with all of its idiosyncrasies and vulnerabilities, maybe even paradoxes, locked away. Through your actions, you all taught me two of the most important lessons I have learned about leadership in my life. The first is that the best leaders do not put up walls. They take them down. They aren't flawless, unfeeling marble pillars. They're relatable and sincere and authentic human beings. Second, you taught me that every single person has a rich past, a personal history that's filled with their life experiences and their hope. And if we refuse to acknowledge that and choose instead to see people as one-dimensional, as defined by their job or their rank or their class, gender, nationality, race, or some other marker of their background, we're doing them a disservice. In summary, by choosing to present myself as one-dimensional, I was doing myself a disservice. I thought coming to Tuck and leaving behind the confines and familiarity of the Army was courageous, and that I was ready. But I am bolder still today than I could have ever expected to be, thanks not just to the classes I took here and the projects I completed, but because I had all of you as my teachers. Am I like you all? Authentic, open, and embracing of yourselves and your past? Wearing your identities as true medals of pride and honor? I wasn't before. Now I'm striving to be, and I hope you will continue to do the same. Thank you.